Let me ask you this question. Are you a good, dependable steward? What's a steward? A steward is a manager. According to the Bible, a steward is someone who has been given authority by God to manage his creation, to manage his property. Not to own the property, not to go and do with the property whatever he or she decides to do, whatever pleases them, but to do with God's property that which pleases God. God is the owner. He is the owner of the property. And what is it that God owns exactly? Well, according to Psalms 24:1, he owns everything. Psalms 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him." A good steward is a servant who is mindful of the fact that everything belongs to God. And as such, he or she realizes and remembers that God will return one day. And when he returns, he's going to assess his property. He's going to receive what belongs to him. He's going to receive it back. And he's going to receive an account of how that property was managed while he was away. So he's gone. He left us to manage the property. He comes back. He's going to assess that property. And he's going to see how we handle things. Jesus tells us himself. Jesus says in Luke 12:42 and 43, the master said, "Let me ask you, who is the dependable manager, full of common sense, that the master puts in charge of his staff to feed them well and on time?" He answers the question himself by saying, he is a blessed man if when the master shows up, he's doing his job. A good and dependable steward is one who does the job that God has assigned him or her to do, realizing that he or she is not the owner, but rather they've been entrusted, if you will, to manage the property for another person, to manage the property for God for a season. You and I have been entrusted to manage, to steward the property of God, God's property here on earth for a season. Things such as time, talent, resources, tangible things, even people. All of these things belong to God, and he has called us to manage these things. So the question is, how are you managing God's property? Are you managing the property well? Are you being a dependable, faithful steward of the property? This will be determined by how well you manage it. One last verse for you, Colossians 3:23-24. Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you are working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you a reward. He will give you an inheritance, rather, as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ. So be a good steward and manage God's property well.